All right. We're going to start chapter 4 in just 1 second, but we have a special guest. One of the things that is absolutely 100% real in this story are the cats. The cats are real. They are 100% real. This is Sage. He is 6. And he is a very sweet boy. I would also like to point out, so when I got him as a kitten, this is one of my favorite things, he was fully black. And then he started going white, and I couldn't figure it out. Sage had vitiligo, or has vitiligo. He has not changed for 4 or 5 years now. He's going to be mad at me. But you can see he's got a little white spot on his paw. I know, my handsome boy. I know. But you can see he's got a little pink toe pad. His nose you can't see anymore, but it's this. Actually, I'm just gonna. You can see he's got a little pink nose. Hi, Sagey. He's like, Mom, what are you doing? Yes, my handsome boy. But Sage is going to hang out with us while I narrate, and hopefully he does not get too upset with me. He already looks upset with me. So we'll find out. This is going to be fun. I know, my love. On to chapter 4. Chapter 4. 17? Sam was still lying in bed, eyes closed, when she woke up. She opened her eyes, blinking into the early morning darkness and thinking about the night before. She was hoping that things today would feel better than she had felt yesterday. She had to have faith that things would work out, didn't she? Rays of sunshine were peeking out through the window, and Sam blinked until her eyes adjusted to the room and went wide in shock. She looked around and she realized, in absolute confusion, that she was back in her room at home. She shot up in bed and then looked around wildly. This was definitely her room, but it wasn't her room. The walls had been painted in brightly colored stripes of green, blue, yellow, and pink, which ended in a black carpet. An author's note. The circus striped room, real. I don't remember when it was. It was, I think, the beginning of high school. My parents kind of sat me and my sister down and said, we're going to let you design your room. And me being the little weirdo that I was like, I want circus stripes because I'm crazy. And I've always been a little crazy. So my father, bless him, went around the room, like painted with whatever, and then went around with a string with chalk and twanged it to make the edges. And so I literally had a circus striped room in like pink, blue, green, and yellow. And it was insane. I have a picture of it somewhere. I think it's my very first profile picture on Facebook. If I can find it, I'll post it. But yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, the description of the room is real. It was garish because I also did pick an animal print comforter and a black carpet and black curtains and circus striped room, and it was a choice. Would I make it again? Probably. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. But I just want to shout out to Pops for making me my circus striped room back in the day. She looked down at her bed and saw an animal print comforter. and her black and red white Scotty dog blanket was nowhere to be seen. The black curtains that hung over the windows were gauzy enough that the light was starting to shine through and more things were coming into focus. There was a huge purple smiley face poster that she had never seen before in her life hanging next to her door. Her dresser was still there, but as she climbed out of bed and looked at the mirror, there were pictures of herself that she had never seen before. Then she looked in the mirror and almost fell backwards over the little bench. She moved a hand in front of the mirror, and the hand moved with her. She smiled, and the face looking back at her smiled too. The problem was, this wasn't the face she went to bed with. Granted, she could tell that it was her face, but she looked grown? She looked around the room and saw a calendar hanging next to her closet door. She looked at the year, and it was like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. 2004? She almost yelled, and then, realizing what time it was, she reverted to a whispering, I'm in 2004. She did the math in her head and realized what this meant. She walked back to her dresser and looked in the mirror again, inspecting her face. She had the same mousy brown hair and the same hazel eyes she had always had. Her skin was pale and clear. She looked the same while looking absolutely and completely different. It was a startling contrast to how she had gone to bed last night in her Looney Tunes pajamas. She looked down at her body and saw an old t-shirt with the Ramones on it. She had no idea who they were, but that was not the most important thing to focus on right now. She also realized she wasn't wearing any pants. She found herself pinching her legs together and walking around her empty room, covering herself until she found a pair of pajama pants in a crumpled pile next to her bed. Okay, what is going on here? She said as her fully clothed teenage body started to pace back and forth in a room that was hers but wasn't hers. She sat back down on her bed with the blankets that weren't hers and curled back up under the covers and closed her eyes. Her stuffed puppy was still there, so she clung to him like a totem and hoped that if she closed her eyes, maybe she could Dorothy her way back home. She closed her eyes and thought to herself, there's no place like home, over and over again like a silent prayer. She opened her eyes, but she was still in this weird circus-striped room. She squeezed her eyes shut again as hard as she could, and she was screaming the words internally at this point, but when she opened them again, she was still here, in this place that was hers but wasn't home. Okay, I was at camp, and I went to bed, and I woke up in my 17-year-old body. This isn't the worst thing that could happen. At least it's my body, right? She said to herself, trying to convince herself that it could be worse, and she could be in such a worse situation. She was like her mother when it came to a stressful situation. So she started to assess everything and gather as much information as she could. However, nothing was where it was supposed to be, and she found herself rummaging through her own things like some sort of memory burglar. She looked at the pictures again, and she found that Phoebe and Nick were still in some of the pictures. She also noticed some guy she had never seen before in her life. She grabbed one of the pictures of her and the boy on a swing set, and they were kissing. She was kissing a boy on a swing set in a picture. She sat down on the bench in front of her dresser and looked at the picture, and then looked up at her face in shock. She inspected both faces, and sure enough, that was her, kissing a boy. She paused while the words processed their way through her very confused brain. Do I have a boyfriend? She asked herself excitedly. She wasn't sure if she was elated or terrified. She had somehow been transported from being an invisible 12-year-old girl to being an almost adult with a boyfriend in the course of one night's sleep. What was she supposed to do with that? She needed to talk to Nick, but she looked at the alarm clock next to her bed, and it was so early in the morning. There was no way anyone was awake. Mom! Mom will definitely be awake, she said as she jumped off the bench and reached for her door. Her hand gripped the doorknob, but then let go as if it was on fire. She suddenly realized she couldn't tell her mom this. As much as she loved her mother, she would think she had actually gone insane. Ellen Reese was not exactly the type to believe in time travel adventures, and she didn't even know how to explain what was happening to her anyways. She needed to talk to Nick because he would at least have an idea or a theory behind it, and maybe they could come up with a way to get her home. Okay, so I have to wait it out until I can get to Nick, she said to herself when she heard her stomach grumbling. I can always just hang out with Mom for breakfast, she asked herself in the mirror. Just try to act natural, she said to herself while not knowing at all how her 17-year-old self would act. She walked up to the door and took a deep, calming breath as she reached out and turned the doorknob. The hallway looked the same, and she walked down the stairs into the living room. She wasn't shocked that the living room was entirely different. Her mother loved to change things around on an almost monthly basis. Sometimes it was just moving furniture, but there was a time about a month ago where Sam had come home to all the carpets ripped up and her mother sponge painting the floor to look like faux carpet. She hadn't understood it, but at the end of the day, it made her mom happy. She walked to the kitchen and found her mom in the exact same spot she had found her in a few days ago when she had been getting ready to go to camp. She looked almost exactly the same, although she had a few more grays than she had the last time Sam had seen her. Apologies. You're up early, her mom said, looking confused. Sam was curious if her teenage self was no longer an early riser. Yeah, I was having trouble sleeping, she lied. Her mom looked suspicious, but gently shrugged and replied, Well, I was just going to start making Sunday breakfast if you want to help, she asked. Sam's eyes lit up just a little, and she said, Absolutely, a little too enthusiastically. She had always loved helping her mom with Sunday breakfast. Her mom continued looking at her quizzically, and Sam had a feeling that her teenage self would have immediately rejected the idea of helping. Sam thought to herself, Well, I'm doing a real bang up job of pretending to be teenage Sam. In her defense, Sam thought about the fact that her mother was some sort of mind reading, all seeing mother oracle. So the idea of trying to pull one over on her seemed almost laughable, and the more Sam thought about it, before her mother could get more suspicious, she asked, What are we making for breakfast? Her mother's squint released into a general look of suspicion as she replied, I hadn't decided yet. What do you want to make? Sam didn't skip a beat and said waffles. There was nothing like waffles on a Sunday morning. Everybody likes waffles. She had never met a person who didn't like waffles. Plus, they were the perfect medium for Sam's one true love. Sam's one true love. Butter, butter, and more butter. She would let the waffle cool a little, just so she could smear butter in every crevice and then douse it in maple syrup. Her mother was generally repulsed when she did this, but her father looked on in pride at the monstrosity that was his daughter when she ate waffles. So, me and my family, this is another author's note, sorry. Me and my family do have a very strong connection with waffles. We used to have this thing that we called Awful Waffle, where we'd make a bunch of waffles, but there would be like every topping known to mankind available. Like we're talking like ice cream, whipped cream, maple syrup, nuts, fudge, candy, jam, butter. That's also really true. One of my favorite foods in the world is butter. I love butter so much. Love me some butter. Love me some waffles. If you don't like waffles, that's sad. Okay, back to the story. Her mom laughed, and her deep love of waffles seemed to assuage her suspicious curiosity. All right, just let me refill my coffee and we'll get going, she said as she moved towards the coffee machine. Her mom looked back and said, "You're making your own coffee this morning," as she started pouring some more into her mug. Sam looked confused, but then realized that she was almost an adult now. She was allowed to have her own cup of coffee. She had only ever had sips of her dad's candied version of coffee so far, and she had loved it. She walked over to the pantry and grabbed her favorite mug from the cabinet, relieved to have some familiar things still around. She poured herself a cup and then went to the fridge for some milk, but instead found some plastic jugs of creamer with different flavors on them. She chose one that said something about pecan pie on it and poured it into her coffee until it was a very, very light tan. She took a sip of this sweetened, caffeinated concoction, and a light moan left her lips involuntarily. Good? Her mom asked. Great, Sam replied. Her mom and her fell into a rhythm pretty quickly, and soon Sam was pouring batter into the waffle maker while her mom was at the griddle frying up some bacon. The hash browns were in the cast iron on the stove, crackling away to a nice golden brown. Her mom was still throwing her side eyes on occasion, but she wasn't saying anything. They just sat there in a somewhat comfortable silence, listening to the bacon popping and the hash browns sizzling. "So, what are your plans for today?" her mom asked her as Sam was pulling the first waffle out of the iron. Sam thought about it for a second as she poured more batter in the now empty iron. She paused. "I'm not really sure," she replied. Sam looked at the clock and it was nearing 9 o'clock in the morning. She heard feet on the stairs and looked to her left to see her sister's sleepy face yawning as she turned the corner. "Good morning," Sam said cheerily. Her sister cocked her head to one side and gave the same suspicious, confused look that her mother had given to her. Ren looked at their mom and said, "What's gotten into her?" in the middle of a yawn. "No clue. She seems weird," her mom said. Sam was almost offended before she realized that clearly she was acting weird compared to the teenage version of herself that her mom and sister were clearly used to. She wasn't sure how she was supposed to act, so she had just given up on trying to imitate the older version of herself. "I'm just in a really good mood," Sam said in an attempt to make excuses for her current behavior. Her mom and sister both shrugged at each other, and Ren went to the pantry to make herself a cup of coffee. Ren was about 2 years younger than Sam, and she was shocked at how grown up she looked. She had to remind herself that she also looked grown up, so this shouldn't be a huge shock. Her platinum blonde hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she was wearing a pair of sleep shorts and an old t-shirt she recognized as their dad's. "Ren, do me a favor," her mom asked without looking at her. "Go knock on our door and wake your dad up," she continued. Without even replying, Ren wrapped her fingers around her coffee mug and trudged back up the stairs to wake the sleeping beast. Her dad still wasn't a morning person, and for a good portion of her life, he had worked overnight shifts. However, her mom insisted on Sunday morning breakfast no matter what. It was nice to know that this continued to be a family requirement all these years later. They heard the knock on the door and Ren's distant voice saying, "Dad, breakfast!" And then her footsteps walking back down the stairs. "Did he actually wake up?" their mom asked her. I heard him grunt, so yeah, I assume he's coming down, Ren said as she absent-mindedly picked up the spatula and started flipping the hash browns around, pausing only to sip on her coffee. Sam always loved when her dad woke up on Sunday because it was like that scene in a movie, in a monster movie, when Frankenstein starts walking, all the while trying to communicate through a series of grunts. Then, as if by magic, he learned speech and always grunted out a murmuring, just like that, with almost no pronounced vowels. It cracked her up every time, and this morning was no different. Some things never change, Sam said to herself quietly as she pulled another waffle out of the iron. When breakfast was ready, they all grabbed plates and helped themselves straight from the countertop filled with food. They sat at the breakfast nook, a huge slab of something heavy that was built into the wall and then held up by a wrought iron leg bolted to the floor. Their dad had been revived by the smell of bacon and was cracking jokes within no time. Their mom rolling her eyes at her husband's silliness. Ren and Sam laughing along. It was the picture of familial bliss, and Sam was really relieved to have this respite during this time of utter confusion. Another author's note, just because I felt like it was important. I used to love Sunday breakfast. My family was not as much as this. Like, this story is like insisting every Sunday we have Sunday breakfast. We didn't do that. But every once in a while, I remember I would like open my bedroom door and I could smell the bacon and I was like, oh, Sunday breakfast is happening. And I'd come downstairs and there would just be like bacon on the griddle. Um, but I also remember my dad. My dad loves a good fried egg over easy, but he has a lot of trouble flipping them. And so he'd always ask me to do it because I had better luck. I don't always have good luck. Currently, I mean, I love my eggs fried with over easy yolk. I love me a runny yolk. Oh, it's so good. Um, it's so messy too. I do a lot of sandwiches. Like yesterday, I made biscuits from scratch, just like drop biscuits because I my biscuits always come out too runny. But like, there's nothing, especially when you live overseas and like they don't eat breakfast like we do in the U.S. So like, I'm usually like a bacon, egg, and cheese kind of girl or like some sort of meat. I don't even care. An egg and cheese on a biscuit is like heaven on earth sometimes. Because, like, anyways, back to the story. What's your plan today? Ellen asked her husband, who shrugged with a mouthful of bacon and waffles. Swallowing, he replied, I think I'm going to the comic book store today. I haven't picked up my subs in a while. Sam saw her opportunity and blurted out before she could think it through. Ooh, can I come with you? She really needed to find Nick and talk to him, and she assumed this was the only opportunity she would get. Her dad looked genuinely befuddled by her request. She looked around at her family, and everyone had a different version of the same puzzled faces. I just thought, Sam stammered out. But before she could finish, her dad intervened. No, I mean, yeah, you can absolutely come with me. I'd be happy to have some company, and I know George would love to get a visit from you, he said. But there was a subtext to how he said it, almost suspicious of why she would suddenly want to go. Sam wondered when the last time she went to the store was. The silent confusion only hung over the breakfast table for another minute or so, but then the easy banter slowly returned, and soon everyone was cracking jokes like usual. When breakfast was done, they started packing up food and piling the dishes next to the sink so her dad could do the dishes more easily. Her parents kept giving each other furtive looks, and her sister kept squinting over at her with her head cocked like a confused puppy. Sam wasn't sure if it was best to address it or just pretend like everything was normal. I'm going to get ready. I'll be down in a little while, she said to her dad, who was filling the sink with soapy water. Sure, sweetheart. I'll finish this and then go throw pants on, he said while he giggled. Their family was a strict pajamas family, meaning that they were almost always in pajamas if they were in the house. Her dad loved to say he'd throw pants on anytime they had to accomplish something in the general public. They liked to at least pretend to be moderately respectable in public. Sam walked up the stairs and into her room, shutting the door behind her with a sigh of relief. She knew her family was suspicious that something weird was happening, but she doubted they would guess what that something was. She just needed to talk to Nick. She caught a reflection in the mirror and was still shocked when she saw her face. She bent to inspect it, and she could see her actual face in there. All the pieces of the puzzle were there, but it was like the frame that the puzzle goes in had changed. She couldn't put her finger on what exactly that change was, but it was a marked difference between yesterday and today. Mm. She walked over to her closet, knowing she would return to looking in the mirror before she left with her dad. Most of the clothes were different, although she saw a few of her t-shirts were still there from a few years ago. She picked up the first pair of jeans that she found and grabbed a t-shirt. Suddenly, she realized she would have to change. Was it okay to change? This was her body in the future, but she felt torn somehow because this still wasn't her body. She pondered the idea for a while and then came to the conclusion that 17-year-old Sam would forgive her, and she started to undress. She threw her jeans on and then pulled the Ramon shirt over her head. She looked down and saw with equal parts excitement and horror the rounded lumps on her chest. Oh no, Sam whispered to herself. She was resigned to the idea that it would happen someday, but she had just been thrust into the world of bras. She had no idea what to do. She rifled through her closet until she came across a brightly colored bra. She spent the next 10 minutes trying to figure out how to get the torture device on her body. She had seen women hook and unhook bras on TVs and movies before, but as she contorted her arms behind her back, she found herself completely lost and confused. After 10 minutes of attempts, she ended up putting it on backwards, fastening in the front of her belly, and then wriggling it around until it was in position. She pulled it up so it was cupping the mounds of fat and then slipped her arms through the straps. She wiggled and writhed in an attempt to see if it would get more comfortable. However, it is always a futile attempt at comfort when wearing an underwire bra, even when made of cotton. Before she put her shirt on, she inspected herself in the mirror. The biggest differences she noticed were the boobs, but also the power of her body. She felt so much stronger in this body than she had in her own. Her legs looked more like small tree trunks than her little 12-year-old legs. She was thin but not skinny. Her family were all built larger than most, big boned, as her grandma liked to say. She didn't know exactly how to describe it, but her body felt so much more muscular and robust than she had expected. She threw her t-shirt over her head and realized with delight that it was her basketball team shirt from last summer. Glad to know some things never change, she said to her reflection. She ran a brush through her hair, gave herself a once-over, and then headed back downstairs to meet her dad. As always, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate y'all being here. I appreciate y'all watching this and tuning in. And anybody who has read on Wattpad, thank you, thank you. Please log in if you have the time, read the actual chapters, or, just watch them here, whatever makes you happy. Next up is chapter 5, The Comic Book Store. It's going to be really fun. And that's it. I got to say thank you again. Remember, keep spreading goodness, keep spreading kindness, keep spreading sunshine, my little chickadees. And I will see you next time. Bye.